Leadership today is often framed as vision, strategy, or raw intelligence. We imagine leaders as brilliant minds charting bold courses through uncertainty. But Bill Campbell's story shows us something different. Leadership is also about coaching. It's about creating trust, building courage, and guiding people not just with instructions, but with presence. He didn't just shape companies worth trillions of dollars. He shaped people who built those companies. And that's why he became known not just as an executive, but as the trillion-dollar coach. Think about the complexity of Silicon Valley at the turn of the century. Google was a young company with massive potential, but endless growing pains. Apple was on its way back from the brink of collapse, powered by Steve Jobs' relentless vision. Intuit, Netscape, and countless startups were fighting to survive in markets where fortunes shifted overnight. These weren't just technical challenges, they were human challenges. How do you keep a team together when the stakes are sky high? How do you give feedback to leaders who already think they're the smartest in the room? How do you resolve conflicts without breaking trust? Bill Campbell's genius was not in writing code or designing hardware. It was in coaching people. Listening deeply, giving honest feedback, challenging with love, and building relationships so strong that even the most competitive executives leaned on him. His lessons weren't abstract theories. They were practical habits. Build trust first, speak candidly, resolve tensions quickly, and never forget that leadership is about people, not just profits. What makes Campbell's story so powerful is that his lessons don't belong only to Silicon Valley. They belong anywhere leadership exists, in businesses, big and small, in classrooms, on sports fields, even within families. Trust, candor, courage, and respect are universal currencies of human growth. Whether you're leading a startup, managing a small team, or just trying to be a better friend, the principles Bill embodied can change the way you approach others. This playbook is about those principles. It's not about memorizing Bill's every word, but about learning the timeless truths he lived by. In the chapters ahead, we'll explore why coaching is central to leadership, how to build trust that lasts, how candor fuels growth, how to resolve conflicts before they burn teams apart, and how to lead with both love and courage. We'll also see how Campbell's coaching rippled outward, not just shaping billion-dollar companies, but creating cultures where people could thrive. At its heart, this is not a book about business, it's a book about people. And it's about the rare kind of leader who understood that the greatest legacy is not the company you build, but the people you help grow. Bill Campbell's legacy is measured not only in dollars, but in trust, friendship, and love. That is the playbook you're about to learn.
When we think of business leadership, we often picture authority, the boss at the head of the table, the CEO delivering strategy from the stage, the manager handing out tasks and deadlines. But Bill Campbell flipped this image upside down. To him, leadership wasn't about giving orders, it was about giving support. It wasn't about telling people what to do, it was about helping them discover their own strength. That is the role of a coach. A coach doesn't play the game for you. They prepare you, guide you, push you, and sometimes challenge you in uncomfortable ways. But when it's time to perform, the player must step up. Bill carried this idea from the football field, where he started his career, into the heart of Silicon Valley boardrooms. He became not just a business leader, but a business coach. And his influence shaped some of the most successful companies of our time. Why does this matter? Because the challenges of modern leadership are not solved by authority alone. Technical knowledge is important, strategy matters, but people are at the core of every company. Teams don't just need a boss, they need someone who sees them, believes in them, and holds them accountable with both honesty and compassion. That's what a coach does. And when leaders step into that role, everything changes. The first lesson in embracing the role of coach is presence. Bill was famous for showing up in meetings, in hallways, in one-on-one conversations. He listened more than he spoke, and when he did speak, his words carried weight because people knew he had truly heard them. Presence is about making people feel they matter. It's about eye contact, attention, and the willingness to pause your agenda to focus on theirs. The second lesson is support without softness. A coach doesn't coddle. Bill was warm, but he was also direct. If something wasn't working, he said it plainly. If a team was falling short, he called it out. But the key was that his feedback came from a place of care, not ego. People trusted his criticism because they trusted his commitment to them. For leaders, this balance, being supportive but not indulgent, is vital. It creates accountability rooted in respect. The third lesson is building belief. People rise to the expectations set for them. A coach sees potential that individuals may not see in themselves and then works to bring it out. Bill believed in the leaders he coached, Steve Jobs, Larry Page, countless others, sometimes more than they believed in themselves. That belief became fuel. Leaders today must do the same. Look at your people, not just as they are, but as they could be, and help them bridge that gap. And finally, the role of a coach is about service. Authority-driven leadership often seeks recognition. Coaching-driven leadership seeks results for others. Bill didn't seek the spotlight. He wasn't the face of Apple, Google, or Intuit, but he was the engine behind the people who were. His legacy was measured not in headlines, but in the growth of others. That humility is a reminder true leadership is not about being the hero of the story. It's about helping others become heroes in theirs. The role of a coach in leadership is not optional anymore. In a world where talent defines success, where culture drives performance, and where trust is fragile, leaders who act like coaches create environments where people can thrive. They guide instead of dictate. They build instead of command. They elevate instead of overshadow. And in doing so, they leave behind teams that perform better, grow faster, and last longer.
At the heart of every great leader is not authority, not brilliance, not even vision. It is trust. Without trust, people will not follow you. Without trust, feedback falls flat, collaboration breaks down, and culture collapses. Bill Campbell knew this better than anyone. His success as a coach didn't come from giving orders. It came from building relationships so deeply rooted in trust that even the most powerful executives in the world welcomed his guidance. Why does trust matter so much? Because leadership is not about control, it's about influence. And influence cannot be demanded, it has to be earned. The foundation of trust is consistency, showing up, listening, and proving through action that your words can be believed. Leaders who want loyalty must give loyalty first. Leaders who want honesty must model honesty themselves. Trust begins with the leader's behavior long before it shows up in the team. Bill practiced this relentlessly. He took the time to know people, not only as professionals, but as humans. He remembered birthdays, asked about families, and showed up at games and events. These weren't tactics, they were genuine acts of care. And because people felt seen, they gave him access to their real selves, their doubts, their struggles, their fears. That kind of access is only possible when trust is present. For modern leaders, the lesson is simple. Invest in relationships before you need them. Too often managers try to build trust in moments of crisis when tension is already high. But trust is built in small, consistent actions over time. A quick check-in, a word of encouragement, a promise kept. These moments accumulate like deposits in a bank. When conflict arises, you can draw on that account. Without it, you're bankrupt. Another piece of Bill's trust building was candor with care. People knew he would tell them the truth, even if it was hard to hear, but they also knew it came from a place of belief in them. This combination, truth with respect, strengthens trust instead of breaking it. Leaders who sugarcoat to avoid discomfort erode trust. Leaders who criticize harshly without care damage it. But leaders who speak honestly with compassion deepen it. Trust also thrives on consistency between public and private behavior. Bill was the same person behind closed doors as he was in public meetings. That alignment matters. People don't trust perfection, they trust authenticity. If you want trust, show up consistently. Be the same person regardless of the room you're in. Finally, trust requires vulnerability. Leaders sometimes believe they must project strength at all times, but admitting mistakes, asking for help, and showing humility invite others to do the same. Vulnerability signals safety, and safety is the soil where trust grows. Bill could connect with leaders at the top of their industries because he wasn't afraid to be real, to share his own doubts, and to approach them as equals, not idols. When you strip away titles and strategy, leadership is about relationships, and relationships live or die on trust. Bill Campbell's legacy proves this. The greatest coach in Silicon Valley didn't just teach management techniques. He built trust so deep that it outlived him. And in your own leadership, that's the lesson to carry. Before people will follow your vision, they will follow your trust.
Trust lays the foundation of leadership, but candor builds the walls. Without honesty, trust is shallow. Without courage, honesty never leaves your lips. Bill Campbell understood this, and it became one of his trademarks. He was direct, sometimes uncomfortably so, but always in service of the person he was coaching. His feedback was blunt, but it never felt cruel. It felt like care. That's the balance leaders must strike, to be truthful enough to fuel growth and courageous enough to say what others won't. Candor is not about criticism for its own sake. It's about giving people the truth they need in order to grow. Many leaders avoid this. They sidestep hard conversations, sugarcoat issues, or hope problems will resolve themselves. In the moment, this feels easier, but avoidance corrodes teams. Problems fester, performance drags, and people never stretch beyond their comfort zones. Leaders who fail to be candid fail to unlock their team's potential. Bill's approach was the opposite. He believed people deserved the truth. If you weren't meeting expectations, he'd tell you. If you were blind to a weakness, he'd point it out. If tension was brewing in a team, he'd drag it into the open. But he did it in a way that left people feeling respected, not diminished. That was the secret. Candor delivered with humanity. Courage is what makes candor possible. It takes courage to look someone in the eye and tell them the hard truth. It takes courage to call out dysfunction in a team of strong personalities. It takes courage to challenge someone who has more authority than you. Bill had that courage, and he modeled it so consistently that the leaders he coached began to practice it themselves. For modern leaders, the lesson is clear. Candor is a responsibility, not an option. Your team deserves honesty, even if it's uncomfortable. The key is how you deliver it. Feedback that comes from ego wounds. Feedback that comes from care heals. Before giving feedback, ask yourself, am I saying this to prove myself or to improve them? That one question can transform the impact of your words. Candor also requires timing. Blunt feedback in the wrong moment can crush morale, but holding back too long lets issues rot. Bill was skilled at finding the right time to deliver the truth, often in one-on-one settings where people felt safe, but sometimes in groups when the whole team needed alignment. Leaders today must practice the same discernment. Choose moments where honesty can land as guidance, not as humiliation. And courage extends beyond feedback. It shows up in decisions. Courage is admitting when you don't know. Courage is standing by a struggling teammate when others doubt them. Courage is choosing integrity over popularity, truth over comfort. Without courage, candor dies in your throat. With courage, candor becomes the spark that ignites trust, growth, and performance. One of Bill's lasting lessons was that leaders who avoid hard truths fail their teams. Leaders who embrace candor, backed by courage, set their teams free. They free them from illusions about their performance.
They free them from silent tensions that sap energy. They free them to grow even when growth requires discomfort. Candor and courage are not skills you master once. They are practices you must renew every day. Each conversation is a chance to either withhold or to step up. Each choice is a chance to either shy away or to lean in. And the more you practice, the stronger you become. That was Bill Campbell's gift. He showed leaders that honesty delivered with respect is not harshness, it is love. And that courage in conversation is not aggression, it is leadership.
Great leaders know that success is rarely about the brilliance of one individual. It's about the strength of the team. No matter how gifted the CEO, how visionary the founder, or how driven the entrepreneur, if the team beneath them is weak, disjointed, or mistrustful, progress stalls. Bill Campbell recognized this truth early in his career and carried it with him throughout Silicon Valley. He saw teams not as collections of talent, but as living systems, where trust, alignment, and accountability determine the outcome far more than raw skill alone. So what makes a team thrive? First, psychological safety. This is the sense that individuals can speak openly, share ideas, admit mistakes, and challenge assumptions without fear of humiliation. Without safety, people retreat into silence. Meetings become performative, innovation withers, and problems remain unspoken until they erupt. Bill created environments where everyone, from engineers to executives, could voice concerns or ideas. He understood that when people feel safe, they bring their whole selves to the table. Second, clarity of roles and goals. Teams fail not because of lack of effort, but because of confusion. Who owns what? What does success look like? What's urgent and what's noise? Bill pushed leaders to define responsibilities clearly and to articulate goals in plain, motivating language. He knew that when everyone understands their role and the team's shared purpose, collaboration accelerates. Third, candor in collaboration. Thriving teams don't avoid tension, they resolve it. Disagreements are inevitable, but if handled with honesty and respect, they fuel growth instead of resentment. Bill encouraged open debate in meetings, pushing people to challenge ideas directly rather than whispering frustrations later. He wanted teams to surface conflicts early when they could still be managed constructively instead of letting them fester into politics. Fourth, shared accountability. On weak teams, accountability lives only at the top. On strong teams, accountability is distributed. Everyone owns outcomes together. This means celebrating wins collectively and owning failures collectively. Bill emphasized that success is not about personal glory, but about the team's performance as a whole. This mindset breaks down silos and reduces ego-driven behavior. Fifth, respect for the whole person. Bill knew that thriving teams were made of human beings, not job titles. He encouraged leaders to understand their people's lives outside of work, their families, their passions, their challenges. When people feel respected as full human beings, loyalty deepens and engagement rises. This doesn't mean blurring every personal boundary, but it does mean recognizing that people don't leave their humanity at the office door. Finally, celebration and recognition. Teams thrive when effort is noticed and wins are celebrated. Bill often reminded leaders to say thank you sincerely and often. Recognition is fuel. It costs nothing, but its impact is enormous. When people feel seen for their contributions, they bring more energy, creativity, and commitment. What Bill taught Silicon Valley, and what applies everywhere, is that thriving teams don't happen by accident. They're built intentionally, with trust as the foundation, clarity as the structure, candor as the air, accountability as the ground, and respect as the culture. Leaders who focus only on strategy and ignore these human dynamics may succeed for a while, but cracks will show. Leaders who embrace the role of team builder create organizations that don't just perform, they endure.
Wherever people work together, conflict is inevitable. Differences in opinion, style, ambition, and priorities will always surface. In fact, conflict can be healthy, a sign that people care enough to argue passionately. But when left unmanaged, conflict becomes toxic. It creates mistrust, silos, and disengagement. Bill Campbell knew this well. His gift was not in pretending conflict didn't exist, but in addressing it directly, quickly, and with enough care that people left stronger, not weaker. The first principle of conflict resolution is face it early. Problems that are ignored don't fade, they fester. Leaders who look the other way hope tension will resolve itself, but usually it grows underground until it explodes. Bill believed leaders had to act like referees, calling out tensions as soon as they noticed them. He often said that unresolved conflict is like rust. It spreads silently until the entire structure is weakened. Great leaders act quickly, not aggressively, but decisively. The second principle is separate the person from the problem. Too often, disagreements become personal. Instead of focusing on the issue, a project direction, a missed deadline, a different strategy, people attack character. This erodes trust. Bill's coaching emphasized framing conflict around behavior and outcomes, not identity. Saying, "This approach isn't working," is very different from saying, "You're failing." Leaders who model this language keep tension constructive rather than destructive. The third principle is create safe space for resolution. Public confrontations often escalate. Bill encouraged leaders to handle disputes in private first, giving people room to be honest without losing face. In one-on-ones, people are more willing to admit mistakes, acknowledge frustration, and find compromise. When resolution requires a group, the leader's role is to set the tone, respectful, curious, and focused on the solution, not the score. The fourth principle is use candor as a bridge. Honest feedback, when delivered with care, cuts through tension faster than avoidance or politeness. People often feel frustrated not because of the conflict itself, but because they don't feel heard. Candor gives acknowledgement. I see your point. Here's mine. Let's figure out the middle ground. By bringing truth into the open, leaders shift the conversation from hidden resentment to visible problem solving. The fifth principle is seek alignment, not victory. Conflict resolution is not about proving who's right. It's about finding a path forward that serves the team's goals. Bill often reminded leaders that ego kills collaboration. In his coaching, he asked people to step back and ask, what outcome serves the company? What solution strengthens the team? This reframes conflict from personal battles to shared responsibility. The sixth principle is close the loop. Too often, teams think they've resolved an issue, but lingering tension remains. Bill made sure to follow up, checking in after the resolution to ensure wounds had healed. This step is critical. Conflict isn't truly resolved until trust is restored. Leaders who circle back send the message, we care not just about the decision, but about the people involved. And finally, Bill modeled respect through conflict. Even in heated debates, he never disrespected individuals. He listened, acknowledged, and sometimes disagreed strongly, but he left people feeling valued. That respect turned conflict from a wedge into a bridge. Teams left tough conversations not fractured, but clearer and often closer.
One of Bill Campbell's most powerful insights was that leadership isn't about managing roles, it's about coaching people. Too many leaders see their teams only through the lens of job descriptions, the engineer, the marketer, the designer, the manager. But people are more than their titles. They are individuals with strengths, weaknesses, fears, and aspirations. Bill coached the person first, the role second, and that made all the difference. Why does this matter? Because when you coach only the role, you focus narrowly on tasks and outcomes. You're concerned with performance, metrics, and deadlines. But when you coach the individual, you step into a deeper relationship. You understand what drives them, what holds them back, and how to help them grow, not just in their job, but in their life. That growth then feeds back into the role. Stronger individuals create stronger performance. Bill practiced this by listening with real curiosity. He wanted to know not just what someone was working on, but how they were feeling, what challenges at home might be affecting them, or what long-term dreams they held. This wasn't about prying, it was about care. By seeing the full person, he could offer guidance that resonated beyond the workplace. A developer under stress might need empathy more than pressure. A rising manager might need encouragement to lead with confidence. Bill's advice was tailored not to the position, but to the human being. For leaders today, the lesson is clear. Invest time in knowing your people as people. Ask questions that go beyond the task list. Be curious about their motivations, their goals, their worries. This doesn't mean crossing personal boundaries or trying to be everyone's best friend. It means recognizing that no one leaves their humanity at the door. If you coach only the professional shell, you miss the real opportunity. Another element of coaching the individual is developing strengths, not just fixing weaknesses. Many leaders focus on correcting flaws. Bill did the opposite. He amplified what people did best. He believed that excellence comes from leaning into strengths while managing weaknesses so they don't get in the way. This approach inspires people because it shows them their potential instead of just their limits. And finally, coaching the individual means building character alongside competence. Bill didn't just ask people to deliver results, he pushed them to be better teammates, better communicators, better humans. Leadership, in his view, wasn't just about business success, it was about personal growth. That's why so many people, long after achieving wealth or power, still remembered Bill as one of the most important figures in their lives. The message is simple. Roles will change, jobs will evolve, but people remain. If you invest in coaching the individual, you create not only better employees, but better leaders, partners, and friends. That legacy lasts far longer than any quarterly result.
In the high-pressure environments of business, respect often gets overlooked, and love is rarely mentioned. Yet for Bill Campbell, these were the most powerful tools of leadership. He believed that if you wanted people to give their best, you had to show them genuine care and treat them with dignity. Leadership, in his view, wasn't about inspiring fear or enforcing authority. It was about creating a culture where people felt valued as human beings, not just as workers. Love in leadership doesn't mean sentimentality. It means choosing to see the humanity in every person you lead. It means caring enough to listen when someone is struggling, even if their challenge isn't directly about work. It means investing time in people's lives outside the office, remembering their family milestones, celebrating their personal wins, offering support in times of difficulty. Bill was known for this. He didn't stop at the professional surface. He built relationships rooted in genuine affection, and in return, people trusted him, opened up to him, and were willing to push themselves further because they knew he truly had their back. Respect, meanwhile, is the daily practice of leadership. Respect is shown in how you listen. Do you interrupt, or do you hear people out? Respect is in how you give feedback. Do you criticize harshly, or do you guide with honesty and care? Respect is in how you treat every member of the team, from the most junior staffer to the most senior executive. Bill treated everyone the same. He believed titles mattered less than contributions, and contributions mattered less than character.
The lesson for modern leaders is clear. Respect creates loyalty. People will leave companies with high salaries and flashy perks if they don't feel respected. But when respect is present, people stay, they grow, and they give more of themselves. Respect makes people feel safe, and that safety fuels performance. Love and respect also work together to resolve tension. When conflicts arose, Bill didn't attack or assign blame. He reminded people of their shared humanity. He would sit leaders down and say, in effect, you don't have to like each other, but you do have to respect each other. That baseline of respect allowed conflicts to be managed without destroying relationships. At its core, leading with love and respect is about prioritizing people over ego. It's about realizing that business results are important, but they are built on human relationships. Culture doesn't come from strategy documents or slogans. It comes from how people feel about each other and about their leaders. And people remember not just what you accomplished, but how you made them feel along the way. Bill Campbell's legacy proves this truth. The companies he touched grew into giants, but the stories that endure are not about revenue or market share. They're about the way he made people feel valued, supported, and respected. That was the real power of his leadership.
Every leader wants innovation, but few are willing to create the conditions for it. Innovation doesn't happen in safe, predictable spaces. It thrives where risk is encouraged, where people are allowed to fail, and where resilience carries teams forward after setbacks. Bill Campbell understood this balance. He knew that companies like Apple and Google didn't succeed by avoiding mistakes. They succeeded by fostering cultures where risk was possible, resilience was expected, and innovation was the natural result. The first principle is give permission to fail. Fear is the enemy of creativity. If people are terrified of being punished for mistakes, they'll play it safe, stick to the familiar, and avoid bold ideas. Bill worked to normalize failure as part of growth. He encouraged leaders to celebrate experimentation even when it didn't pan out, because each failure carried lessons that led to breakthroughs. Leaders everywhere can learn this. Don't just tolerate failure, honor the courage it took to try. The second principle is encourage calculated risk. Innovation isn't about reckless bets. It's about smart, informed risks that push boundaries without destroying stability. Bill taught leaders to ask, what's the upside? What's the downside? Can we survive if it fails? If the answer was yes, the risk was worth taking. This framework kept teams bold but grounded, allowing them to innovate without gambling recklessly. The third principle is build resilience as a habit. Setbacks are inevitable. Products flop, projects collapse, markets shift. What matters is how teams respond. Bill encouraged resilience by reminding people that setbacks are temporary, not permanent. He framed challenges as opportunities to learn, adapt, and come back stronger. Leaders who model resilience create teams that don't spiral in failure, but regroup and push forward. The fourth principle is protect time for creativity. In fast-paced environments, it's easy for people to become consumed by deadlines and execution. But innovation requires space, time to think, explore, and experiment. Bill advocated for giving teams room to breathe, to brainstorm, and to play with ideas without immediate pressure. This isn't wasted time. It's an investment in the breakthroughs that fuel long-term success. Finally, the fifth principle is anchor risk in trust. People only take bold steps if they feel supported. Teams innovate when they believe their leaders will stand by them even if things don't work out perfectly. Bill built that kind of trust, which gave leaders like Larry Page and Steve Jobs confidence to make big bets. For today's leaders, the message is simple. If you want innovation, you must be the safety net. People can only leap if they know you won't let them crash. Innovation, risk, and resilience are not abstract concepts. They are daily practices, shaped by culture and reinforced by leadership. Bill Campbell's legacy shows that the greatest leaders don't just demand innovation, they design environments where it can flourish. They don't just ask for resilience, they embody it. And they don't just tolerate risk, they make it part of the playbook. One of Bill Campbell's unique strengths was his ability to coach not just individuals, but entire leadership teams. It's one thing to mentor one person at a time, it's another to shape a culture where mentorship itself becomes part of the DNA. That was Bill's gift. He multiplied his impact by embedding the principles of coaching into the leaders he worked with, who then carried them outward to their own teams. In doing so, he scaled leadership beyond his direct presence. The first principle here is teach leaders to become coaches themselves. Bill didn't want people to depend solely on him. He wanted leaders to take what they learned, the trust, candor, courage, and care, and apply it with their own teams. When leaders model coaching, they create ripple effects. One person's growth fuels another's, until mentorship is no longer a role, but a culture. The second principle is create leadership forums for shared growth. Bill often gathered leaders together not just to talk strategy, but to resolve tensions, exchange feedback, and strengthen bonds. These gatherings became spaces where leaders coached each other, learned from each other, and built the trust needed to lead as a united front. For any organization, building structured spaces for leaders to connect and grow together ensures that mentorship isn't confined to private conversations, but becomes a collective practice. The third principle is focus on the whole system, not just the stars. Many companies fall into the trap of pouring energy into their top performers while neglecting the broader leadership bench. Bill resisted this. He believed every leader, regardless of rank, deserved coaching and growth. By mentoring across levels, he built resilience into organizations, ensuring they weren't dependent on a few individuals, but on a wide, strong foundation. The fourth principle is embed values into leadership development. Bill didn't just teach tactics, he reinforced values: respect, candor, courage, and care. These values became the North Star for leaders he coached, guiding decisions even when he wasn't in the room. Leaders who internalize these values don't just manage, they mentor, they model, they multiply the culture. Finally, the fifth principle is leave a legacy of growth. Bill knew that his ultimate success wasn't measured by the size of his influence, but by its continuity. After his passing, leaders across Silicon Valley didn't just remember his advice, they carried it forward, teaching others the same principles. That's the mark of mentoring at scale. It outlives the mentor. The lesson for leaders everywhere is simple but profound. Coaching one person makes a difference. Coaching leaders creates a movement. If you want your organization to thrive long after you're gone, don't just coach individuals. Teach them to coach others. Build systems where mentorship flows freely. Create cultures where growth is shared, not siloed. That's how you scale leadership, and that's how you leave a legacy.
Bill Campbell's influence was deeply rooted in a specific time and place, Silicon Valley, during its explosive rise. But his lessons are not locked in the past. They are timeless, and they serve as a playbook for leaders navigating the challenges of today and the unknowns of tomorrow. The business world has only become more complex, more global, more digital. Teams are often spread across continents. Technology evolves at breakneck speed. Competition can emerge overnight. Yet in this shifting landscape, the essence of leadership hasn't changed. It is still about people. And that's why Bill's playbook matters more than ever. The first principle for the future is human connection in a digital age. Remote work, virtual teams, and constant communication tools risk making leadership transactional. Bill's reminder is that trust, presence, and care must still come first. Even across screens, leaders can build connection by being attentive, personal, and consistent. The medium may change, but the principle of showing up for your people remains eternal. The second principle is courageous candor in an age of noise. With more voices, more data, and more pressure than ever, leaders can feel tempted to soften truths or avoid them entirely. But candor remains essential. Future leaders must still tell people what they need to hear, not just what they want to hear. Done with care, honesty builds trust, even in uncertain times. The third principle is inclusive leadership in diverse environments.
Modern teams are more diverse than those of Bill's early days, across cultures, genders, backgrounds, and perspectives. His principle of respecting people as full humans carries even more weight now. Inclusion isn't a trend, it's a foundation for innovation and resilience. Leaders who embrace diversity and lead with respect will thrive. The fourth principle is resilience in an unpredictable world. Crises, from pandemics to market crashes to technological disruption, will continue to test leaders. Bill's coaching on resilience, encouraging people to see setbacks as lessons and opportunities, is more relevant now than ever. Future leaders must normalize struggle as part of growth and model resilience as a daily practice. The fifth principle is legacy through coaching. Bill's playbook doesn't end with individual leaders, it multiplies when leaders pass it on. Future success depends not just on creating great companies, but on creating great leaders who can carry forward the same values of trust, candor, courage, and care. Leadership is not about leaving behind your name. It's about leaving behind a culture where people can thrive long after you're gone. The future will always bring uncertainty. Technologies will evolve, industries will rise and fall, and challenges we cannot yet imagine will emerge. But Bill Campbell's playbook gives leaders a compass. Trust people, care for them, tell the truth, coach the individual, build strong teams, and lead with respect. These are not just strategies for the past, they are lifelines for the future.